I did. I hated Parliament. It was a charade. I had been accustomed to arguing in a court before judges and with a great long bar of Queen's Counsel, and I knew that from that experience that the beauty of the experience was that it was the quality of your arguments that affected the result. Parliament is a charade because whichever side is in power, the matter before the House, the decision is already made. It's been made in the caucus or in the party room of the Liberals if the Liberals are in power. And here are these men and women going through this bloody charade, knowing full well what the result is going to be. And this, to me, I just couldn't stand that. The only, to me, interesting and significant part of the Parliament was questions without notice, and even that was, of course, cooked to a considerable extent. Now, what are we to do? Now, it's inevitable in that circumstance, my friends, that people are going to become cynical about parliamentarians and the parliamentary process. And one of the ideas I have, Geoff, about it is that I think that at an election, both sides should say, we have a clear manifesto. These are the things in which we fundamentally believe, and we think we have the right answer, and we're going to legislate. But equally, both sides should be honest in regard to a number of issues and say, well, look, there has to be legislation in this area. We're not sure that we've got exactly the right answer. We will put in a draft bill. There will not be a caucus meeting. We expect there not to be a meeting equivalent on the other side. This will be debated, and we, the government, will undertake to abide by the decision of the Parliament. Now, you immediately do two things by that. You firstly improve infinitely the quality and relevance of the debate within the Parliament. And secondly, and very importantly, you increase the degree of contact between the member and his or her electorate, because the electorate will know that the member is not bound by a party vote. They will be making the decision. So by definition, it will make sense for the Member of Parliament to have much closer contact and discussion and try and get the sense of feeling of his or her electorate. The other, that's one particular idea I think which ought to be picked up by both sides. The other thing that I wanted to, well, two other things I'd like to mention, Geoff, in regard to what you said. What you had to say about the concept of enlarging the scope for the selection of Cabinet, of course, struck a bell with me. You will recall that in 1979 I delivered the Boyer Lectures, and in those lectures this was one of the propositions I floated. One of the things Mike, as Deputy Premier, one of the things I argued for was the abolition of the states. I don't know whether you love me for that. I don't feel so madly about that. I think we'd be better off without them, but still, I love some of my state colleagues so much that I don't want to put them out of a job. But seriously, one of the propositions I did argue strongly there is the proposition that Geoff put forward so compellingly, and that is creating a capacity by amending the Constitution to enable a proportion of the Cabinet to be selected from outside the Parliament. I suggested in the Boyer Lectures that 1/4 of the Cabinet should be able to be selected by the government in power from outside the Parliament. There are men and women of great competence in the business field, the academic field, the practical field, who would be very willing to give their capacity and time to being a Minister of State, but as Geoff said, they are not prepared to go through the whole process of parliamentary selection and so on. These people, the quarter, would be in the Parliament for only for the time, for question time, and for passage of legislation in the department for which they were responsible. And I think if that were done, we would greatly improve the quality of the governments that would be brought forward from both sides of politics. Finally, before I round off, and my thanks to you, Geoff, on the question of the Republic, one suggestion I have made to Julia and made publicly is that I believe that the question should be put in a way which is not going to make it, as it has historically been, such a divisive issue, but one which can be a uniting issue. And that is to simply put the question, are you in favour of Australia becoming a republic, the republic to come into effect at the end of the reign of the present monarch? And instead of struggling to get 50%, I reckon you get at least 95%. Because there's so many of the Australian population who justifiably, in my opinion, have an enormous affection for Her Majesty the Queen. I've had the opportunity of getting to know her very well. And she is a magnificent head of Commonwealth. And I believe that there's so many of our fellow Australians who feel that a vote for the Republic would be an insult to Her Majesty, but if they knew that it was not going to come into effect until the end of her reign, I think you'd get over 90%, and I think that would be the way to go. Geoff, as I say, you've distinguished yourself tonight with the depth and quality of your analysis. I repeat, you have brought to bear upon it your practical experience as a politician and as a Premier, and a very successful Premier of Western Australia, and your academic capacity to analyse. You have given a great basis for the people in this audience and the much wider audience of millions of people who will be able to have access to it through the ABC and so on, to think about these issues and to agitate in a way which is calculated to try and improve the quality of governance in this country. We should not believe that it's simply good enough to muddle through in the way we have on the basis of the past. And may I practically say to the people in the audience and to the people in the ABC going to listen, do something about it yourself. Don't sit complacently on your backside and say, that's been an interesting intellectual experience. Do something about it. And what can you do? I'll tell you what you do. If you're Labor inclined, join the Labor Party. If you're Liberal inclined, join the Liberal. But get in and meet this situation that Geoff has talked about, the hollowing out of the two major parties. It's ridiculous. We want to see that those parties which are going to remain major vehicles for governance of this country, that they do truly have a wider representation than they do now. It's absurd, the low level of membership on both sides. So get off your backsides and join up. Thank you, Geoff. Geoff, thank you very much.